guys that we continue to talk about in the select scrimmage, moving it over to what we think could be the top 10 to 15 NBA players in the league currently. Last year, according to CBS Sports, they have Jokic at 1, Giannis at 2, Doncic at 3, Tatum at 4, Embiid at 5, Durant at 6, Curry at 7, Shea Gilgeous at 8, Dame at 9, John Morant at 10. And just to kind of round out the 15, you have LeBron James and Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, Sabonis, and Kawhi Leonard, with Halliburton, Anthony Davis, Pascal Siakam, Jimmy Butler, and James Harden rounding out the top 20. All right, Pete. I said a mouthful there. There's 20 players there. You'll disagree with probably a bunch of them. I can already hear it in the voice. But in your opinion, which young
You might
player?
send me that list. Sorry, before you
Yeah.
finish, you might send me that. Thank you.
Yeah, but really, I kind of want to get your opinion of, like, maybe not necessarily, and I'll send in the Discord for you.
Perfect.
Who do you think? See if I said, there you go. Just saying the list.
There it is.
In your opinion, what young player could potentially enter in this conversation before we talk about replacing a player or anything like that? And let me read this comment really quick before you give your answer. Kubi23 said they should have gotten Wendell Carter Jr. on that team. Nah, you're not
it
wrong.
wouldn't have been bad in terms of versatility. I'd probably rather have him than Bobby Portis. That's for sure.
Yeah, Bobby Porter's ultimate glue guy though. Can't hate on the glue.
that's literally, I think, the reason he's there. I mean, it's glue guys. That's what they're looking for.
But which young player, Pete? What young player could potentially be added to this top 10 to 15 in your opinion? Who's going to take that next step?
I think there's a couple obvious people we already talked about. So I will just get them off the table as far as like obvious ones, as far as, people we've already discussed. I think Anthony Edwards is the number one, as far as I'm concerned. He's the best player on a team that's actually talented enough to possibly contend. I mean, that would be a big point of discussion, debate for a lot of people, that Timberwolves team, but they have the talent. Whether or not you think Rudy Gobert should be Defensive Player of the Year doesn't really matter. They have enough guys, enough versatility to be a talented team in the playoffs. I do think Anthony Edwards is like clearly the next one up, just in terms of he has the whole package. He's got the mentality. He's going to have huge, highlight plays that elevate him, because that is part of the equation. What makes a superstar? It's not just the play. It's also the flashiness, how much people want to watch you play. So I would say he's clearly number one as far as the guys that could take a jump. But I would say Cade is right there too, Bernie. I think people really underestimate how bad his year one situation was in Detroit. There was nothing there. Had Dwayne Casey, who, I mean, he might as well have been a mummy coaching the team the last few years. Like, it would just, there's nothing in terms of any sort of game plan, game to game. He didn't have really anything around him that kind of played into his strong suits, really. And then last year was just an albatross. It was a year that just didn't really matter. Once the shin got hurt enough where surgery could happen, he wanted to go for Wembanyama. So go take a year, get healthy, and come back next year. That is a dude that from the minute he comes back healthy is going to just wreck games all over the league against teams that people don't expect him to. And it's as simple as the fact that he's 6'8", he plays high level defense, and he can shoot. That's all you need in today's league to be a really high level player, and he's got it from day one. Is he like actually listed at 6'8", or is he a little shorter than that? Because I feel like I've seen that. Yeah.
I think he's like 6'6", 6'7". I think he's 6'6".
Yeah. I think that might be like with shoes on. The number they give is 6'8". I feel like I've seen that around. But those are the first two that come to mind. Do you have any other ones before we get into maybe some of the less obvious guys?
One player that I think could potentially enter in this conversation, and he's already there basically, I think, is going to be Tyrese Halliburton.
Yep.
A young player, only going to be, I think he's going to turn 23 this year. I mean, again, like when you think about young guys that are going to be entering in their prime, guys that are going to be dominating, like he just signed that contract extension. He's a guy that, again, a lot of people were questioning on the draft day, like, always got a funky shot. His shot doesn't look, conventional, and people are going to question what he can do. But offensively, defensively, he's kind of shown you that he is an everyday player. He's a superstar in many
Mhm.
forms. And I'm excited to see him take that next step, especially when this Indiana Pacers team finally decides to step it up in terms of, hey, we're finally going to look to get better. We're going to look to finally build around this guy in a way that we're going to get players that fit, like you talk about all the time, the timeline for him. And so I'm excited for when that happens. I think that he's going to be a guy that will be an All NBA second and first team in his near future. Like that's how good I think he's going to be. Again, I'm excited for what the Pacers will have in store for that guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think he might actually. I said Anthony Edwards might be the closest. It's probably Halliburton, just purely based on he's a little older. He's actually going to be 24 this year, still very young. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, man, he's an all around type of guy. He's the type of guy that elevates, like raises all ships, as they say. You know. Um, I just gotta say my guy. Bernie, you're gonna laugh at this because I
RJ
say him all
Barrett.
the time. Oh, stop. Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
My guy Mobley, he's literally like one piece of his game away, and it's just a consistent shot. If he could, if he could just hit threes at like 35%, even like 34%, like the dude is really right there. Like he's already, in my opinion, top three defender in the league. He's going to be consistently for probably the next 10 years if he stays healthy. But he's also in one of the best situations, I would argue, of any of these guys. The team is truly built for lots of postseason experience. And I think one of the most underrated parts of that team, Bernie, is just like what's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell, right? Like
Yeah.
they can't, that is a team that can't hedge every bet they have on Donovan Mitchell. So development of the guys they already have and have had still has to be like paramount to what they're going forward, thinking is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm very, very interested. Like Garland is another guy that we, obviously could talk about. He's right there. I just think Mobley is more, he's right there in terms of the whole package. Like I said it until I was blue in the face last season. I told you on the stream, everybody, the guy should have been defensive player of the year last year. If you look at his off-ball help defense, it was far and away the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And he had the least to work with. He was playing essentially like a reverse point guard on defense. He was orchestrating everything on defense, his positioning and length. Literally everybody else on the team, their defensive rotations were based on what Mobley was doing. That is unbelievably high level for a 21-year-old to be that good on defense.
Yeah.
It's just gonna get better because the IQ is there and the size and athleticism are it's off the charts. So yeah, Mobley is that guy. I'm telling you, if they run more pick and roll this year, he'll be up over 20 points per game and he'll be a borderline all-star. But I think with Mitchell there, the question is like, is there just not enough touches for him?
Yeah.
Depending on how that goes, there's still a lot of talk. Is Mitchell going to leave after next season or the season after? That
Mm-hmm.
might be the perfect runway to say, well, he already wants to leave. We have this kid who literally might be the next, top 15 guy. Let's just go that direction. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a hedge on circumstances changing, but I do think Mobley has all the talent to be a top 15 guy.
Yeah. Some kind of under the radar guys. And again, these might be guys that might need another year or two, maybe even a little bit more. That could be down the line. Someone that benefited tremendously from the Sacramento Kings run is a guy like Keegan Murray.
Yeah.
I think a guy that
It's a
shoots
deep cut, Bernie. I like it.
the ball really well. Again, like when you saw him in the playoffs in that series against the Golden State Warriors, like yes, they lost, but when they finally decided to kind of turn it up a notch, or they needed that X factor to come in, he was one of those guys that you were like, okay, he's going to be a guy in the near future, just because of the fact that he can shoot the ball really well, can put the ball on the ground, and really, I think he's going to be a guy that just maybe won't ever be like I would say maybe in the top 10, but a guy that could definitely be in the top 20, top 15 if he plays his cards right. as a young guy that could definitely step up in that sense where, maybe he's the second or third guy on the team because they need a guy that could just shoot the rock. And when you shoot 42%, that is that's going to get you a lot of places, and that's going to get you big
Sure.
contracts. So he's a guy I definitely have on my list as a guy that could
One
definitely
thing
do it.
I love Keegan Murray. Like he is I like that pick a lot because I think he's probably pretty far off, but still, in terms of guys who are just not flashy, just do everything the right way, he's like a top candidate.
Mm-hmm.
The more I watch Keegan Murray play, the more I think, and this is hyperbolic in the sense that he's probably never going to be this guy. He does remind me in a weird way of Tim Duncan. Like it's just solid fundamental basketball, doing the little things that like just don't necessarily make him a exciting guy, but it's just winning basketball. I don't know. I really like that kind of stuff. He seems like he's gonna be somebody we talk about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, I got two. I'm gonna go back to back two. One of them, actually, I think both of these are probably going to be debatable for a lot of people, but I think these are guys that potentially could be top 15, top 20 guys. Um, just the situation needs to be right for them. The first one, I do think the situation is here for this guy. Mikal Bridges, Bernie. I think he legit has top 15, 20 guy potential in him. And I think that hold people back from thinking super highly of him is just his age, right? He would not be the first late bloomer ever to be like in his, post 25 career in the NBA to then take the next step and become truly a guy in the league that you can build a team around. Like I think of guys like Steve Nash is the one that always comes to my head. Like didn't really go super great for him in Dallas. Gets shipped out. They choose Dirk, a couple of years in Phoenix. And then the dude, all of a sudden, we get into that late 20s, 30 range, and he's one of the best players in the league. And it was purely circumstantial, but also he just kept getting better. Year after year, the work was being put in, and it wasn't, athleticism dependent.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing beyond just great. Kind of like what I was just saying with Keegan Murray, but obviously just from the guard perspective, that's Mikal Bridges as a three. I watch him. He's a guy that just is consistently, he is improving the small parts of his game that make the difference. And the opening he has now in Brooklyn and the apparent like trust and dedication that the Nets front office is putting into him, there is really a runway for this kid to be super special in this era of his career. And we'll see what happens this year. If he averages as many points, just sheerly statistically, if he has the second half of what he did last season all year upcoming, he'll be right there anyway. I just worry that like people, the damage is done in terms of like his mental image for people. People think of him as this role playing, just kind of, in the back wing of a team. Like he's a great guy to have, but he's never going to be that great.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get bad stats or good stats, bad team type of vibe from him. Even though that's what the Nets were last year, I think he's better than that. My second one, Bernie, and I don't know, this might be the more controversial of the two. You tell me which one is more controversial of the two I'm giving you right now. I still think Desmond Bane is a guy that like might have a really top of the NBA type level to him. And
Okay.
it's for a few reasons. One, his offensive game is just underrated. Like there's just no way, shape, form that you couldn't say it's underrated in the league right now. And part of the thing with him is he is the most offensively consistent player on his team, which will never be discussed on a team with John Morant, with a flashier guy like that.
Yeah.
And then also they have the defensive consistency of Jaren Jackson Jr. that also overshadows Desmond Bane. The dude he's a cannon. He's like unlimited range. It's a beautiful shot. He's the type of guy that's going to age incredibly gracefully through the league. He also is a great defender too. Like he's an above average defender. And I think for all discussion about what Memphis does when Ja Morant is out and how much they perform just as well, people always make it a discussion about right? is the team better without Ja, right? Or like this, what was it? They went
Hmm.
like 20-4 a couple years ago without him.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to see it this year too. What's gonna happen these first 25 games without him? I think what we're gonna see is very similar to 2 years ago. Desmond Bain is gonna have the ball a lot more. He's gonna shoot the ball a lot more, but also he's not gonna just be like an ISO
Hmm.
slasher who, dominates possessions like John Morant does.
Yeah.
So their offense is going to end up flowing very well through him, and it's going to just his game is going to elevate because it's hidden under this superstar most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, he's still young too, man. He's only 23, I think. So yeah, man, I don't know, Bernie. Which one of those two guys do you think is more? I shouldn't say that. He's 25. I was 2 years off, so he's a couple years younger than Mikal Bridges. But I don't know, man. I see it still in him. What do you think?
I would say your Bane take is probably the more not outlandish is the right word, but I would say the more audacious pick, just because again,
Yeah.
a guy that I think we've seen when he's played with John Morant, without John Morant, like we've seen him in the playoffs too. Maybe he just needs a little more time and like to be that guy, and he was that guy for a second. In those playoff series, but the one thing I'm curious to see with Bane is, can he do it on a consistent night? Can he do it in the playoffs? And we've seen that hasn't been the case yet. And so I want to see him take that next step in the playoffs because again, I know what he does in the regular season. Someone who's drafted in fantasy basketball, played really well. Obviously, outperformed what a lot of
Mm.
people expected from him. But I kind of want to see a little bit more offensive consistency when the playoffs come. Because again, he's greater in the regular season. I just need to see it in the playoffs.
Well, let me give you two counterpoints just because Bane is my guy. I got to ride hard for this guy. All right. His regular season points per game is 21 and a half. Okay. Actually averages more points in the playoffs. He averages 23 and a half in the playoffs. It's slightly less efficient. He's like 48% from the field in the regular season, which is incredible. Then he's about 43, 42% in the postseason. So it goes down, but he's taking more shots. He averages somewhere in like the 6 rebounds, 4 assists, kind of both postseason, regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my one thing for this guy, Bernie. All right. And there's a lot of people who are going to hear this and take it as a joke. Okay. I'm taking a slight at another player to make a joke about why Bane's going to be better. I'm not making a joke. I mean this very literally. He's going to be better sheerly from the fact that Dylan Brooks is not on this team. Like that type of guy was completely detrimental to a player like Desmond Bane. I would argue more he had more impact on Desmond Bane's game than anybody else on the team, right? The rationale is John Morant is going to get his shots no matter what. He's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taking shots from him.
Yeah.
Aaron Jackson Jr. is the down low guy. He's a post player. You're not taking shots from him really either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the only people are these mid-level guys. The shooting guard, the small forward, and potentially whoever your five is if he's going to shoot. Luckily for them, it's Steven Adams, so it doesn't matter anyway. All these shots that Dylan Brooks are taking, which everybody and their mother agrees are terrible, ill-advised, just ball chucking shots. Those are coming directly out of Desmond Bane's pocket. Those are his shots. It's like you have, Draymond is the guy on the team taking shots from Clay with the Warriors. That didn't happen because everybody knew this guy's a way better shooter. Let's give him the shots. But Dylan Brooks is
Mm-hmm.
eating time, shots, and ball possession from better guys on his team, much more efficient guys. And I would argue, like I already said, there's nobody that suffered more than Desmond Bane in terms of his shots per game, just time with the ball in his hands because of Dylan Brooks than Desmond Bane. So I would argue the fact that Ja's gone for the first 25, no more, absolutely no more Dylan Brooks. They made it very clear. They even said the
Mm-hmm.
reason this guy's not on the team is his shot taking, his shot selection. Those shots are going to funnel directly to the next guy in line, and it's Desmond Bane. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm anticipating better shot selection from that team as a whole, which for a guy as efficient as Bane it's gonna come out in the statistics, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good shout. I think Mikal Bridges is going to take that next step for sure, especially with him
Yeah,
just being the guy.
just yeah,
Um,
too.
let's see here. I think I had a couple here. I think one of them, I think a guy that potentially could make a huge impact. Uh, a guy that I was kind of really high on. Um, one kind of deeper, I would say like Jalen Williams from OKC. I know he just signed that big
Sure,
contract.
love them.
Again, a guy that is definitely going to be doing a lot of great things. Offensively for this Oklahoma City Thunder team, and the question now starts to become for the Thunder, and we've talked about it before. Like, what are they going to do because they have so many talented players? He is one of those talented players that emerged, right? A lot of people didn't really expect too much out of this guy from Santa Clara, but ended up balling out and is still balling out. Averaging 12, 4, 2 point, three steals and 1 point, or sorry, three assists and about a steal a game. And I think he's just going to get better from here on out. He's looking to get a lot stronger and kind of build on his rookie campaign and see if he can't get a most improved or a six man off the bench type of role for this OKC team. Um, I can see him doing that. I think that this team, the way it's constructed, Josh Giddey, another guy that I could potentially add to this list of guys that could take that next step. A guy that really to me is the what I thought Lonzo was going to be, the Jason Kidd esque type of player. Never going
Mhm.
to average a lot of stats, not going to be flashy or anything like that, but is going to be solid and efficient. A triple double always waiting to happen with Josh Giddey, and those are probably the two guys I would say for me that could potentially be on this at least top 15. I think Giddey might get ousted just because he doesn't score, doesn't have the flashiness that even a guy like Jalen Williams or any of the other guys that we talked about here are going to have those opportunities to. But if you want a point guard that's kind of the solidifier, the glue guy, long, athletic, I think Giddey's your guy. And then I think for Jalen Williams, going to be a guy that comes off the bench or starts on the team and just absolutely dominates the scoring and attacking hit downhill. And I think I'm excited to see again with this Thunder team like how they are able to contractually keep all these guys because it's going to be a lot of money they're going to have to spend.
I mean, it's going to be impossible, really, when it comes down to it. Like you have to. The only way it's possible is if these guys don't end up being as good as we think they are. Right?
Yeah.
That's really it comes down to that. I would argue that they're in a tough spot just because they have so many high end guys.
Yeah.
That it might be tough for like as much as I love Jalen Williams, I would honestly, if you're redrafting like a just young dudes at under 22 right now that you would want going forward, he'd be really close to the top for me. Like he'd be
Mm-hmm.
right there. Same with Giddy. And I actually that's why I would say of the two you said, both of them being the OKC guys, I think Giddy has the higher chance sheerly based on like how much he's going to have the ball. He's going to
Yeah.
have the ball all the
Mm-hmm.
time with them, and he's going to just put up, like you said, monster stats on a night in night out basis. And that is a guy that has taken huge leaps every summer, as far as I've watched him, like for
Mm-hmm.
the last few years too. So great shouts on both of them. Can't disagree at all. I'm huge high on both of them. Here's my last two, Bernie. Um, I'm gonna save I think my sleeper lock, even though he's not really a sleeper, like people know who this is, the guy I'm gonna say. But the next one I'll say, dude, Franz Wagner he
Yep.
stays
That
underrated.
that was actually gonna be my next one.
He stays underrated and underdiscussed on just such a crazy level. It really blows my mind. Like he is one of the very few guys that really can do it all at his size. And not only can he does. He is asked on a nightly basis to do everything for the team. He
Mm-hmm.
plays point guard for them a lot, plays pretty good defense. He also is, a very consistent shooting, just scoring threat at his size
Yeah.
too. Um, I think for him, the biggest thing, and this is slightly kind of opposite to what I just said with OKC, but it's talent around him is finally starting to like line up with where he's at. And,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the timeline that we're talking about, the idea of Franz Wagner next to Paolo for the next 10 years,
Yeah.
it like if I almost makes me envious of Magic fans because those two guys, their skill sets play off each other incredibly well. If they develop their game around each other like they probably should be, and I hope they are doing, they're going to be so hard to play against because they're huge. They're constantly moving without the ball. Both of them are. I'm really high on Franz Wagner. I genuinely, he's one of the few guys. I have very little explanation as to why he's so underappreciated by people in the league. Like, he is never in the discussion of these young guys who could be like potential superstars going forward. And the funny part, Bernie, is he almost kind of reminds me of like, this is again a hyperbole, but it's like in the same sense of maybe it's just because of the way he looks. Like, he's not necessarily the most athletic looking guy, and he's a big white dude. It's kind of Jokic-y, right? Like, he doesn't really play conventional basketball, but when he's allowed to do the things that he excels at, it really truly makes everybody around him better. And those are the types of things that make you like a consistent guy in the league for a long time. If you elevate people, you're going to have a place on most teams. So, yeah, he's right there for me. I mean, a lot of his destiny, maybe it is tied to Paolo, but we both feel super strongly about him too. He's an obvious person we don't even have to talk about in this segment, right?
Yeah.
I think we're both in silent agreement. Like, Paolo is a guy that, and we said this going into the draft last year, physically, just from day one, he was going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But let me go to my last guy, and this is actually my last guy. Situation based, people who are not necessarily even top 35 guys, there is nobody that has the runway to be special and be like a top 20 guy sooner than Tyrese Maxey. He is the number one potential guy as far as he's never thought about like an Anthony Edwards, like a LaMelo Ball, but he truly might be in the best situation of all of those guys. There's a lot of people probably would roll their eyes as much as we've talked about how the 76ers have not necessarily done a great job
Yeah.
this offseason. The funny part is he's going to be the one that benefits the most from how poorly this offseason has gone for them. Like, anything that happens with James Harden negative benefits Tyrese Maxey.
Mm-hmm.
The funniest part about all of it, Bernie, and I don't know if you are going to think I'm an insane person for saying this.
We'll see. We'll see.
In a lot of ways, like, the offense last year at certain points, he should have been the second guy behind Embiid, purely based on the energy and the fact that you have, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bernie, you're the basketball coach, all right? One of the ways I think that, like, really high level basketball teams function at the highest level is by changing pace, like not necessarily getting into a stagnant rhythm of this is how we play. We play at this pace, right?
Yeah.
They have the best potential 1-2 pace change switch up of any team in the league as far as you have the MVP who is this trotting, slow, all around on the floor, whine to his everybody. Guys, sorry, Embiid, I'm just kidding. But really, he's one of the slowest players in the league, right?
Right.
Still a freak athletically. Then you have this guy who's literally a lightning bolt. He's a bullet racing down the court. He's so fast, so fluid in his motion. If anything, that's what gets him in trouble, I think, like in his young career, is he's so quick that he just kind of gets like topsy-turvy almost, and he just like runs around like a chicken with his head cut off almost. But he has really truly gotten tons of high level experience in an early time in his career. And for a lot of guys, that is sometimes the difference between long-term growth and, not reaching your highest potential.
Yeah.
So for me, I look at Maxey, and that's the type of guy I see like in the future. If you told me he was averaging 29 points a game on like a 5 seed, 4 seed in the East, not shocked at all. He has every piece of the game he needs to do that. I don't know. It's just defense. And even then, we see some people in the top of the league who play no defense. So I don't think that is really that big of a holdup. But yeah, Maxey is my number one sleeper. Like, people won't say that about him, but he really is in one of the best spots. If Harden leaves,
Mm-hmm.
Have no other option but to turn to Maxey. They won't get anybody as good as Maxey in any trade for James Harden. It's impossible. So that being said, he's clearly the next guy to get those reps and get those minutes and touches. Love him.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you, man. It's one of those things that Maxi, depending on the situation, like what happens, and many things like that. He is definitely a guy that will definitely take the next step, especially with James Harden wanting out of there. We potentially could see Joel Embiid out of there. Now they can start focusing on a young Tyrese Maxey and building around him and really get him going. I kind of want to see what he does in the future. In terms of development, because again, like you said, he's super quick, super speedy, can get to the bucket really quickly. Now it's just like you said, it's about the change of pace. Like, can you do it now slowly, and can you do it without using your speed as your advantage all the time?
True.
Obviously, you want to take advantage of Maxi's speed, but changing it up a little bit so that way teams don't hone in on what Maxi's weaknesses are, and you can counteract it with different things. And so I'm excited for this year, especially just because this is going to finally be a year where Maxi seemingly is a top player on this team and is going to finally get the ball more in his hands than I would say in years past. So I'm excited for that one. In terms of like the final guy that I would say, and this one may or may not be a sleeper, but could potentially be a good, solid player in the near future. I would probably say Sengun.
Yeah,
Alpha
he's
Sengun
right
from
there for me
Houston.
too.
Uh, you know, was averaging 14 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists a game. He was efficient scoring, and now with a coach that I believe that these players will enjoy in Udoka, you're definitely going to get someone who is who a lot of the teammates are going to like. And as a guy that moves the ball really well, can score the ball efficiently inside. I think he's going to be another great guy and a great addition for the Houston Rockets. Now that he's another year older, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for this Houston team, especially with Udoka. No nonsense, going to finally cut the crap that's been going on in Houston for the last 3 to 4 years, especially with Jalen Green and Christopher and other players that were involved in some situations, and so it's going to be a very interesting thing to see. Uh, Now that is all out the window, finally getting an Alfred Sengun who's going to have a coach that believes in him is probably going to run the offense around him and get guys open looks all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he is one of very, very few players you could play. I said it about Franz Wagner. He's right in the same kind of stratosphere of
Mm-hmm.
Jokic light. He has this passing ability that's very uncommon at his size. He also is just very fluid offensively. Like
Yeah.
he does not have a lot of holes in his game. And you look at, I mean, for me, I just think of how unbelievably bad that situation has been for his entire career so far.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that even Sangoon, I think he was the 15th pick in the draft. I might be
Yeah.
wrong. He was like right
Something like that.
outside the lottery. Like there was a ton of people who looked at him and were like, "Who even is this guy? This guy's terrible. Why are we taking these European dudes?" That's the thing, man. He is fundamentally just a sound player. I like you said, Brent. I'm so curious to see what Udoka is going to do with this squad in particular because now I, I'm just fascinated, man. They have so many ways they could take it. They
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of ball handlers and a lot of question marks as to who should actually be the guy who should be, handling the ball most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny part is I think the person that most people would say is the person least likely to get that honor for the team, and it's Jalen Green. Like he is not that guy. But just like media, everybody look at the team from the outside looking in, like he's
Mm-hmm.
their guard, right? But Sangoon, the results are always better. And now you have Amen Thompson too. It's going to be very fascinating to see what they do,
Yeah.
coaching wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a fun situation for them. And let us know what you guys think about these young guys in the comment section down below. Are you guys in agreement with us? Are these young guys going to take the next step? Can they get to at least top 20, top 15 NBA players in the league? Would love to know your guys' comments and opinions in the comment section down below. As the next generation is starting to fill in, there's going to be more and more guys getting better and better each day, each year. So we're excited to see what you guys think in the comment section down below. So let us know what you guys think.
And importantly, people are gonna, age out. That's another part of the NBA that we don't talk about a lot because it's not necessarily the most positive part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime, I mean, it can't last forever with these guys. It's gonna change sometimes. So, do you want to talk about that? Like people in these positions that maybe are gonna fall out, or do we just want to move on past that? Because it's more negative than I feel like we want to be, but it's also just the real side of basketball too. But so I'll leave it up to you.
Let's save it. Let's save it for
Okay.
another week, and then we can talk about like who we think is gonna probably take a step back, since we talked about guys that take step forwards this week.
Sure.
Talk about guys that take step backs next week. So tune in for that. Again, we'll figure out the way that's going to work. Obviously, I'm heading out, and so I want to make sure that we are getting that stuff situated. But let's move on to the final segment.